There is no war against Venezuela or its people. We are not occupying a country. This was a law enforcement operation.
Virtually no consultation with Congress, and there's no plan that we can see for what comes next.
This is Today as It Happened. Good Monday evening. I'm Holly Furfer, guiding you through our timeline of the day's most important news, from the arraignment of Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro to reaction on Capitol Hill and across the globe. But first, let's take a look at some of the day's other top headlines. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz is dropping his bid for a third term. The Democrat and former vice presidential candidate says he cannot give a political campaign his all after what he calls an extraordinarily difficult year. Walz cites ongoing investigations into fraud in the state's child care programs. He also points to President Trump using the issue as a political weapon. Walz says Trump and his allies want to make Minnesota a colder, meaner place. Law enforcement is investigating an incident at Vice President J.D. Vance's Cincinnati home this morning. Cincinnati police and the Secret Service are on the scene after several windows at the house were broken. Police say one person has been taken into custody but have not said what charges that person may face. It does not appear Vice President Vance or his family were home at the time of the incident. The Senate is back from holiday break and set to tackle one of the biggest items on its list: health care. One major question left at the end of last year was what to do with now expired Affordable Care Act subsidies. Millions face the choice of paying more for their plan or switching their insurance in some way. Senators could take up several proposals. The Senate is also expected to discuss the U.S. strike in Venezuela. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene stepping down today, resigning halfway through her third term after President Trump called her a traitor. Greene began clashing with Trump last year over his foreign policy focus and his reluctance to release Jeffrey Epstein documents. Trump eventually said he would support a primary challenge against her, prompting Greene to announce her resignation a week later. In her northwestern Georgia district, constituents described Greene as a fighter who said things no one else would say. In rapid succession, President Trump has threatened not only Venezuela, but also Greenland, Colombia, and Cuba. Scripps News international correspondent Jason Bellini is live in Washington, D.C. And Jason, Trump's comments are fueling diplomatic backlash from Denmark and European and NATO allies. What are you hearing?
Hi, Holly. They certainly are. Denmark's Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen issued a sharp rebuke saying Trump has no right to annex Greenland and urging the U.S. to, quote, stop threatening a close ally. She pointedly reminded Trump that Denmark already provides the U.S. broad access to Greenland through existing NATO security agreements. We have a military base there. Now, all of this comes after Katie Miller, that's the wife of one of Trump's most influential aides, put out a provocative post on X. You're seeing it right there. Shows Greenland covered in the red, white, and blue flag. Above it, you'll notice the word soon in all caps. President Trump clearly isn't backing down on this. He's mocked Denmark's defense efforts, saying they've added one more dog sled to Greenland's arsenal. Let's listen to what Trump said last night while returning to the White House on Air Force One.
I will say this about Greenland. We need Greenland from a national security situation. It's so strategic. Right now, Greenland is covered with Russian and Chinese ships all over the place. We need Greenland from the standpoint of national security. And Denmark is not going to be able to do it, I can tell you.
So what you're hearing is Trump explicitly linking Venezuela to Greenland through his revival of the Monroe Doctrine. In 1823, James Monroe warned European powers to stay out of the Western Hemisphere. Trump has now extended that logic north to the Arctic, and he's arguing that Greenland, surrounded by Russian and Chinese vessels, represents the same kind of foreign threat in America's backyard that Venezuela did with its ties to Iran, Russia, and Cuba. The message to Colombia, Cuba, and other Latin American nations is clear: comply with U.S. demands or face Venezuela's fate. But the message to Europe is equally stark and far more destabilizing for long-standing alliances, Holly.
And so, Jason, are there any implications here for the war in Ukraine? You've covered that extensively.
Indeed, there are. In the eyes of some European leaders, Trump's effectively announcing a new world order based on spheres of influence. America gets the Western Hemisphere, and by implication, Russia and China get theirs. His national security strategy explicitly describes this framework as far as it relates to the United States. Now, Trump has repeatedly questioned U.S. support for Ukraine, suggesting territorial concessions to end the war and praising his relationship with Putin. So European allies are asking, if Trump accepts spheres of influence for America, will he also accept them for Russia? Holly?
Yeah, it's a good question. Everybody's been asking that. You know, look what's happening overseas. Scripps News international correspondent Jason Bellini live for us. Thanks for your extensive reporting. We'll be checking back with you on all of this.
It's been a very emotional day for Venezuelans in our community as the man who's led that country since 2013 has been captured.
We were waiting for this for such a long time.
When news broke that the self-proclaimed Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro had been detained following a coordinated strike in Caracas, Ana Perez Prince says she felt a sense of relief.
Very happy because this is the first step, like getting closer to freedom.
It's a sentiment shared by many Venezuelans who've been waiting for Maduro to be overthrown. Victor Verdecia, president of Venezolanos Unidos Donde Sea, says he's looking forward to the future.
Definitely is the big change. It's like a restart all over again for the whole country. And this is a big opportunity for everyone.
Maduro and his wife landed in upstate New York Saturday evening, where he will be tried for long-standing drug-related charges. During a press conference at Mar-a-Lago, President Trump announced the U.S. will run the country until there's a proper and judicious transition. That particular announcement garnered mixed emotions.
I believe I'm agree with that because for sure he's trying to help the economy from Venezuela grow up with the right people in the power.
It took us by surprise. We appreciate all, the help from the United States because ourselves we were not able to do it. Then we know that it's going to be a transition, but we already have a legitimate president.
She's referring to the 2024 Venezuelan presidential election, where Maduro failed to win the majority vote but refused to step down. Nonetheless, the community is celebrating as they look forward to a day when they can reunite with loved ones in a country that is free.
We're very hopeful.
Cassandra Garcia, Scripps News Group.
Coming up on Today As It Happened, the arraignment of Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro for drug trafficking charges in a Manhattan courtroom. That's straight ahead, so stay with us.
There is no war against Venezuela or its people. We are not occupying a country. This was a law enforcement operation.
Well, it was just moments ago, Ambassador Mike Waltz defending President Trump's actions in Venezuela after U.S. forces captured the country's president, Nicolas Maduro, and his wife and detained them in New York. I'm Scripps News' Andrew Rafferty, and you are watching On the Scene. We have team coverage with Haley Bull for us at the White House. We want to start with Alex Miller, who is live outside that courthouse in New York, where Maduro's first court appearance just wrapped up. Alex, set the scene. What was it like in there?
Well, Andrew, Nicolas Maduro and Celia Flores were both very calm as they sat in that courtroom. Neither of their voices shook. Flores seemed a little bit more anxious than her husband, but they sat at the same table. They were separated only by a single attorney, flanked by their attorneys wearing headphones. There were translators there to make sure that they understood the proceedings in full. when they responded to the questions from the judge, they responded in Spanish, which was then translated for us. There was a point at the beginning of this hearing where the judge asked Maduro to identify himself, and instead of saying, yes, I am Nicolas Maduro, he went on to say that he is the leader of Venezuela who was abducted by the U.S. military in the middle of the night, saying that he identified as a prisoner of war based on the Geneva and Vienna Accords. At that point, the judge told him there will be time to have those discussions, but made him identify himself. He did say that he has seen the indictment, but he had not read it in full. The judge Mirandized both Maduro and Flores when he spoke to them. It appeared that they had not been read their Miranda rights until that point. When he was asked how he pled, he said, I am innocent, I am a decent man, I am the president of my country, and that he is not guilty of anything mentioned here. He pled not guilty to all 4 charges, as did his wife, Celia Flores. When she was asked to identify herself, she said that she was the First Lady of Venezuela. Both of them were also notified of their right to have a consult with their consular office. They said that they wanted to have that handled. Maduro was taking notes the entire time. Flores sitting there with her hands in her lap for the 30-minute long proceedings. But Maduro made a point to ask if he could take his notes with him, Andrew, something that the judge and the government both agreed to do. They both waived their right to request bail for now. They can request it at any point, and they made it clear that they intend to do so. Now, outside of the courtroom here, there have been protests all morning long, dueling protests, really. Some people who are thrilled with this decision by President Trump to capture Maduro and bring him here to New York, and others who are furious at the decision. We've seen signs from both sides. We've seen Trump flags out here as well as Venezuelan flags. So it is an incredibly heightened moment here. Andrew, I am here, as you know, all the time for these court proceedings. This is one of the more high security situations that we have seen, even given all of the high profile trials that go in and out of this courthouse.
All right, so Alex, the big news there, of course, Maduro and his wife both pleading not guilty. Where does this case go from here? What is next?
Well, they'll go back to the jail that they are being held in right now in Brooklyn. That jail has been occupied at times by Sean Diddy Combs, Sam Bankman-Fried, Luigi Mangione is being held there right now. And their next court appearance will be on March 17th. They made a decision not to set a date for discovery, which is when they'll get the information that the government has against them. That is something that they're going to work through a schedule over the next 60 days. When they are back on March 17th, they will discuss the numerous motions and the schedule with that the defense plans to have. There were a lot of questions about who was going to represent Maduro and Flores because we did not know whether they would need a court-appointed attorney. It doesn't appear that that is the case at this juncture, that they have attorneys in place. But remember, they believe that they were abducted and that this is illegal because they have immunity. They say it's a violation of international law. Obviously, the U.S. government very much disagrees with that, saying that he is not a legitimate president of this nation, particularly because there were elections as recently as last year that they believe were rigged, that there was a different legitimate leader there. And so one other thing, they both say that they have health and medical issues. Celia Flores saying that she has visible issues from the capture itself and that she wants an x-ray because she believes she may have a bruised rib. That's also something that the judge said that he would look into to make sure that she had full medical care while she is in detention here in New York City.
All right, Scripps News national correspondent Alex Miller for us live in New York outside that courthouse. Alex, thank you for painting that picture for us. Let's go now to White House correspondent Haley Bull for more on the Trump administration and how it is responding at this hour. Haley, what is the U.S. role in Venezuela moving forward?
Andrew, that really is the central question here at the White House. President Trump has suggested that the U.S. is in charge in dealing with the Venezuelan officials currently in power. As Secretary of State Marco Rubio has further refined that when pressed on the same question, suggesting that the U.S. is running policy. President Trump told reporters that officials are speaking with Venezuelan interim President Delcy Rodriguez, who was Maduro's #2 in power, and that she is cooperating. Trump saying that what they want is what he called total access to oil. Listen.
We're dealing with the people. We're dealing with the people that just got sworn in. And don't ask me who's in charge, because I'll give you an answer and it'll be very controversial.
What does that mean?
It means we're in charge. Total access. We need total access. We need access to the oil and to other things in their country that allow us to rebuild their country.
Oh my God, that's
Marco
beautiful.
Rubio on the Sunday shows this weekend also suggested that they want an end to drug trafficking, illegal migration, and the end of Iran and Cuba benefiting from Venezuelan oil. And what he referenced when he was pressed on whether the U.S. is control was that the U.S. had leverage, referring to what he called the quarantine on oil that we have seen the U.S. enforce in the weeks leading up to this. And he maintained that the U.S. is making their judgments based on actions, not statements. Now, Rodriguez, for her part, has appeared to soften her tone in recent statements, inviting the U.S. to collaborate, stating, quote, Venezuela has the right to peace, development, sovereignty, and a future. Meanwhile, Andrew, as the president, though, has maintained his warning about the potential for a second strike if they feel it is needed and additional options. At the same time, a senior State Department official says that they are preparing to allow for the reopening of the U.S. Embassy in Caracas should President Trump make that decision.
And Haley, during the initial announcement over the weekend, we didn't hear a whole lot from the administration when it came to the potential for elections. Is there any indication about if and how the Venezuelan people might be able to choose their own path forward when it comes to new leadership for that country?
Well, the administration has not committed to a specific timeline when they have been pressed on this. President Trump only telling reporters that they'll have it at the, quote, right time. The president suggesting that they are, quote, looking more at getting it fixed, referring to oil investments, which was more so the focus of his remarks to media members in the aftermath of Saturday morning's early morning operation in Venezuela, going back time and time again in his comments then and on Sunday night to reporters on the importance of oil investments, and speaking with oil companies before and after the operation. Not so much on elections, more so reiterating that they want to see the steps fixed in the country that they believe need to be done before they get to that point. Andrew, that is certainly a question, though, this administration is likely to face going forward as well.
All right, Scripps News White House correspondent Haley Bull for us. Haley, thank you.
Straight ahead on Today as It Happened.
Getting the flu vaccine can help prevent you from ending up in the hospital.
Welcome back to Today as It Happened. Let's return to our briefing of today's top stories.
The Department of Health and Human Services is rolling back Biden-era child care rules that require states to pay providers before verifying attendance. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. says the old rules created loopholes that diverted money to bad actors instead of working families. The Biden rules required payments based on enrollment, including programs now under investigation in Minnesota. HHS says the new rules will make fraud harder to commit and restore parental choice in childcare. And the EPA will propose limits on how much of a harmful chemical should be allowed in drinking water. It's called perchlorate, and it's found in explosives in rockets. Federal officials say it's not a widespread issue and that it's only making the proposal due to a court order. It mostly impacts parts of the Southwest and East Coast near manufacturing sites where the chemical is seeping into groundwater. Perchlorate affects thyroid function and can be dangerous for children, lowering IQ scores and increasing behavioral problems. And flu activity continues to climb across the United States with thousands of deaths this season alone. Scripps News Washington correspondent Stephanie Liebergen joins us from our D.C. newsroom. And Steph, the CDC is releasing new data today. What have we learned so far?
Hey, Andrew. Well, the CDC releases a weekly update on respiratory viruses, flu, COVID, RSV, and this week's flu report puts the U.S. in the moderately severe category for the flu for the first time this season. So we're definitely seeing a peak from over the holiday season. So the new data that we got from the CDC, let's take a look at that. It is through December 27th. So through that holiday season, the CDC estimating there have been 11 million cases of the flu, 120,000 hospitalizations, 5,000 deaths. All of those are estimates. The 9 pediatric deaths, that is a specific number that is tracked by the CDC, and so that is a confirmed number for the pediatric deaths. The hospitalizations, that's something that we're seeing the most for people who are over 65 years old, the biggest category of folks who are ending up in the hospital. And then the second category is those young kids between newborns and up to 4 years old. So this is an issue, Andrew, that is facing the entire country. 45 states plus Washington, D.C. are in the high or very high category for the number of flu cases that they are seeing. There's only a handful of states that aren't having this high flu activity right now. Right now, we're also on track with where we were last season about this time. And last season was one of the harshest flu years we've had for a while. When it comes to the flu vaccine, some people might think, oh, well, it's already January. We're already into peak flu season. It's not worth it. Doctors say it is definitely still worth it to get the flu vaccine.
Stay healthy out there, folks. Scripps News Washington correspondent Stephanie Liebergen for us in our D.C. newsroom. Steph, thank you.
Coming up on Today as It Happened.
I have no love loss for Maduro. Good riddance to him. May he be brought to justice. But the way the president has gone about this has been very chaotic.
Welcome back to Today as It Happened. Scripps News end of day snapshot of our biggest stories of the day. So let's pick up right where we left off.
They may be more high profile, but in terms of the timing and the charges that they're facing, they're just like everyone else. They're going to have the same rights as everyone else and the same limits as everyone else.
Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro says he is still the president of his country and pleaded not guilty to federal drug trafficking charges. During his first court appearance today, the 25-page indictment accuses Maduro of working with drug cartels to ship thousands of tons of cocaine into the U.S. Here with political analyst Marcus Falcone. He is with the Cato Institute Center for Global Liberty and Prosperity. Thank you, sir, for joining us this afternoon. You know, a lot of Americans don't know a whole lot about Nicolas Maduro. We have him painted right now as a dictator, an indicted narco-terrorist, but he obviously has a political ideology. Can you tell us a little bit about his beliefs and how he actually governed Venezuela?
Well, it's good to be here. Thank you for the invitation. Nicolas Maduro was initially a bus driver, actually, who rose to power within a union, a trade union. Then he became socialist, and then he became part of the United Socialist Party of Venezuela under Hugo Chavez. He served as the Minister for Foreign Affairs before becoming Hugo Chavez's vice president in 2012. And then upon Chavez's death in 2013, Maduro became the president of Venezuela. It is unclear at what point exactly Venezuela transitioned from a democracy to an autocracy. Some people say this already had happened under Chavez. Some people say this happened under Maduro. But what is clear is that Maduro has become a tyrant since at least 10 years ago. And he has been not just a tyrant, but a corrupt leader. He has not recognized the 2024 presidential election results, in which he lost resoundingly by over 35 points against Edmundo González Urrutia. And he has clung to power with the support of Cuban intelligence, Cuban military and public officers, Cuban money also, until, of course, this past weekend when he was abducted, as he says, from his home in Venezuela.
And I know you've written about how this is a victory for Venezuelans in the country right now, but there are some potential pitfalls when it comes to the U.S. role going forward, particularly this idea of running the country, which we have heard at times President Trump talk about. What would you like to see happen in Venezuela as far as the U.S. role going forward?
Well, I'm not going to comment on what the U.S. should do in terms of its foreign policy, but in terms of Venezuela, the fall of Maduro is great news, not just for Venezuela, but for Latin America and the world, really, because the world has one less socialist dictator today. But now the problem is that this can't go on. A system can't go on by means of which Maduro is out, but the rest of the socialist agenda and elite are still in power undemocratically, so to speak. Venezuela already has a legitimate president. It has had one since at least 2024. He is ready to take over the country, and he should actually take the oath as interim president, and he should call for an election where no candidates are banned for political reasons, which is what happened in 2024. Remember that Maria Corina Machado, the main oppositional leader in Venezuela, who recently won the Nobel Peace Prize over her efforts to restore liberty and democracy in Venezuela, was banned from running in 2024. Now, the opposition still managed to have a candidate, Edmundo González Urrutia, and he won. So, if anything, if Maduro is going to fall, then his vice president, Delcy Rodriguez, also needs to fall, along with other socialist public officials. And Edmundo González Urrutia needs to take the oath as interim president now.
And if there are elections that allow Venezuelans to sort of chart their own pathway forward, does the U.S. have to be involved in those in order to ensure they are free and fair? Is there some other non-governmental agency that sort of needs to have a role there in order to ensure that the will of the people is actually heard in Caracas and beyond?
I don't think the U.S. should play a major role. The role that the U.S. should play, is the same as any other countries could play in helping Venezuela transition back to a democracy. Of course, it could try to ensure that there are fair elections that take place so as to end the nightmare that Venezuelans have endured for over 25 years now. But there's no reason why the U.S. should run the country or nominate some sort of delegate or just give orders to then Vice President, now acting President Rodriguez, and just expect her to follow suit. There's no reason why any of that should happen. What should happen is that the rightful president of Venezuela should take the oath as a transition president, call for an election, and then if he believes that he needs help from other countries in ensuring that these elections are fair, in ensuring that there is safety for the people, then he should ask these countries, including the U.S., for help. I don't think that will be necessary. The opposition in Venezuela has already shown that there is a large structure of power that is ready to take over, because in 2024, when Maduro was already an outright dictator, they still managed to show the world how they had won this election that was so clearly rigged that not even Maduro's allies recognize, right? So I don't think there's necessarily going to be a room for the U.S., that there should be a role for the U.S. In helping Venezuela transition to a democracy. Certainly not when it comes to running it.
Yeah. Of course, the other big factor that has caught a lot of people's attention is the U.S. role when it comes to oil in Venezuela. What role do you think that has played in the actions that we saw over the weekend?
Well, I'm not sure what the plans of the Trump administration are with regards to oil, to the oil industry, besides what we have heard publicly, right? That President Trump is going to try to improve access for American companies to the oil industry in Venezuela. But the problem is that even if he manages to do that, if the socialist government that has been in place in Venezuela for over 25 years stays in power, nothing's going to happen. And oil production in Venezuela is not going to improve. Remember that under Chavez and then Maduro, oil production in Venezuela collapsed. It fell by over 70% over the course of just over a decade, right? So even if you improve access for American companies to the oil industry, a socialist regime that has no respect for private property, that has no capital because Venezuela is a bankrupt country to conduct any major investments, this is a country that cannot really have a successful oil industry. So it's not enough, even from a commercial U.S. viewpoint, to remove Maduro from power. You need to remove the whole structure of power that has prevented the oil industry from booming in Venezuela, the country where it should boom the most.
Just ahead on Today as It Happened, Washington is reeling from the capture and arrest of Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro. Stay with us for Scripps News congressional correspondent Nathaniel Reed's reporting from Capitol Hill. That's after the break. Welcome back to Today as It Happened. I'm Holly Furfer. Let's continue our walkthrough of the day's top headlines.
Lawmakers on Capitol Hill have unveiled a new spending bill totaling at least $174 billion. It could get a House vote as early as this week. The bipartisan budget plan is a major step towards avoiding another government shutdown by the January 30th deadline. This package combines 3 of the 12 annual spending bills Congress must pass, including commerce, justice, and science agencies. The House Rules Committee meets tomorrow evening with a final vote likely on Thursday. An ousted Venezuelan leader, Nicolas Maduro, declared himself the president of my country and pleaded not guilty to federal drug trafficking charges during his first court appearance today. A 25-page indictment accuses Maduro of working with drug cartels to ship thousands of tons of cocaine into the U.S. He could face life in prison if convicted. Maduro's lawyers are expected to argue he has immunity as a head of state, and President Trump says the U.S. will, quote, temporarily run Venezuela. And as the legal and political reactions are unfolding over in Venezuela, families and businesses are trying to figure out what Maduro's capture means for them. International correspondent Mary Trini Mena reports from Caracas.
Venezuela and the city of Caracas are trying to resume its activities despite the shocking events on Saturday. Right now, there are Venezuelans lining up in pharmacies and supermarkets. They are trying to stock up provisions because they fear something else could happen in the country, despite the message coming from the government that says they have to remain calm, that they are securing all the places and guaranteeing the services at all the supermarkets and pharmacies. Also, the government have failed to provide the figures of the number of people that were injured or killed during this event. They just have confirmed the death of 32 Cuban nationals belonging to the inner circle of Nicolás Maduro. They were protecting him. But so far, they have not released how many Venezuelans were injured or killed during these events. The government in charge right now is Delcy Rodriguez, which was the former vice president of Venezuela. Now she's the president in charge. And at the very beginning, she says the government will not surrender. They demanded the release of Nicolás Maduro. She has the backup of many loyals of Nicolás Maduro that remain in power, such as the Ministry of Defense. So there is a sudden change in her initial speech, saying now that she's willing to engage into negotiations with Donald Trump and the people of the United States. For some Venezuelans, there's disconcern about this. Some Venezuelans feel Maduro should be released, and they protest over the weekend. And some other Venezuelans kept silence, remaining silent, because they fear of reprisals if they express their ideas. The authorities have been checking all the streets. There are heavy police checkpoints across the city and in other points of Venezuela. Maritrini Mena, Scripps News Group, Caracas, Venezuela.
And Scripps News congressional correspondent Nate Reed is live with me now. He's up on Capitol Hill, where members are beginning to return after their holiday recess, I should say. And of course, the top of mind for most of these lawmakers, at least when facing questions from the press, is about the reaction to Venezuela. Nate, what are you seeing up there?
Well, what's interesting is you hear from the number of Democrats so far just how frustrated they are about the lack of congressional notification ahead of this attack on Venezuela, on a nation's sovereignty, ahead of bringing now ousted President Nicolas Maduro to the United States to stand trial in New York. A lot of concern from Democrats about the fact that notification was not given to the various congressional committees that should have received that notification ahead of the U.S. military taking action against another nation's sovereignty. I had the opportunity to catch up with the vice chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, Senator Mark Warner, who will be in that briefing later this afternoon with congressional leadership. I asked him if he is unhappy with Secretary Rubio, who for a very long time was his counterpart on the Senate Intelligence Committee. Take a listen. Secretary Rubio told reporters the morning after this attack and extraction that this was not the kind of mission that you could give congressional notification on. Given your years of working with him on the Intelligence Committee, do you take that as a credible response from him? Do you take him at his word on that?
The Gang of Eight was set up for exactly this circumstance. You take the leadership, Democrat and Republican of the House and Senate, and the leadership of the Intelligence Committees. We absolutely know how critical it is to keep confidential information confidential. It's never leaked. So I disagree with my friend Marco Rubio. This is exactly the kind of circumstance where you would notify the Gang of Eight at the most confidential level before an attack took place. And the idea that they're trying to argue that this is simply some kind of law enforcement action, it doesn't pass the smell test.
What's interesting, though, Andrew, the level of partisanship and some of the response that we've seen so far. In just the last couple of minutes, our congressional producer, Sam Lisker, was on hand to ask questions of the Senate Majority Leader, John Thune, who told reporters that he had no issue. He said, quote, "I was comfortable with the notification I had." He continued, "They didn't tell me ahead of time, but I think there's a reason why. Like I said before, notification of Congress and answer is really critical. Hypersensitive missions, to me, it seems ill-advised anyway." So clearly, a lot of Republicans in leadership not necessarily taking issue with the fact that they did not have this advance notification. Democrats, though, have also raised concerns about previous briefings from the Trump administration about Venezuela, where briefers had apparently told members of the Senate and the House of Representatives that they were not looking to seek regime change in a classified setting. There is another congressional briefing happening in just the next hour and a half up here on Capitol Hill, where members of the administration will have an opportunity to brief members of Congress directly face-to-face in a classified setting to talk about these latest actions. Again, a whole lot of Democrats, including Senator Warner, going into those meetings with a whole lot of pointed questions and a lot of confusion about what exactly the Trump administration's strategy is here and whether the U.S. wants to run Venezuela, which was an assertion that has been made several times now by President Donald Trump. At this point, the Senate Majority Leader telling our Sam Lisker and other reporters just a short time ago that no one from the administration has asked him about money needed from the U.S. government to effectively run Venezuela. So again, a lot of questions about just how serious that assertion was from President Trump.
Yeah, and I get the process. That's part of this idea that Congress, or at least specific members of the Gang of Eight, should have been aware of what was going on this weekend. But what about those Republicans, I'm thinking back to the 2024 campaign, who called themselves America First Republicans, who, whether it was isolationism or at least certainly a step back from the world stage, this idea that the American government for too long had put the interests of other countries ahead of their own. Are there any Republicans who are maybe not being openly critical, but perhaps skeptical of what the U.S. did in Caracas over the weekend?
At this point, it seems like the number is very few. There are some Republicans who are speaking out openly. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, who resigns from Congress today after having a falling out with President Trump, although someone who is certainly in the America First movement and proclaims that often. She has criticized the administration's decision to go forward with taking over Venezuela with this regime change mission, saying that this is not necessarily in Americans' best interest. There's also Congressman Thomas Massie, the Republican from Kentucky, who's facing a primary challenger pretty much orchestrated by President Trump, who has also been critical of this as well. And the vast majority of Republicans, though, however, up here on Capitol Hill, have so far apparently been at least okay with some of the Trump administration's rationale for conducting these strikes. Again, there's a lot of questions, though, from Democrats on the other side of the aisle about what the motive was here. Was the motive regime change? Was it gaining access to the massive oil fields in Venezuela? Or was it, like the president had been asserting and other administration officials for weeks and months, both classified in briefings up here on Capitol Hill and publicly, that this was about drug trafficking to the United States and Maduro's role leading up criminal cartel, bringing drugs to the United States? Again, a lot of questions up here on Capitol Hill, mostly from Democrats, but some Republicans speaking up as well. Again, members of Congress trickling in here on Capitol Hill on this fly-in day very slowly, as I'm sure you're aware of, Andrew. So as they continue to show up, we'll continue to press that question of whether Republicans, specifically members of the majority, were comfortable with the justification given by the Trump administration and the decision in the first place to invade another nation.
Coming up on Today As It Happened.
The Consumer Electronics Show kicks off this week, and this year, artificial intelligence isn't just flashy, it's virtually everywhere and basically invisible. I'm business and tech correspondent Maura Barrett in Las Vegas. Coming up, how the economy and global trade are shaping the new tech that we all use.
You're watching Today As It Happened, Scripps News recap of the day's biggest events. So let's dive right in.
With more than 4,500 exhibitors and 140,000 expected attendees, a spot on the show floor at the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas is the best chance for a new product to make a splash. From tech heavyweights like Samsung and LG to startups boasting the latest niche innovations, we'll see more than just consumer gadgets. Smarter glasses and wearables are expected to roll out, alongside humanoid robots, chip advancements, improved smart home devices, and even more in mobility, transportation, and healthcare.
The thing that they all have in common, what industry experts are calling context-aware AI, where the artificial intelligence is baked directly into the device.
That means the systems can adapt to you without a lot of buttons or commands. AI spending is driving one of the tech industry's most explosive periods, with the U.S. hoping to harness its power for economic growth on the world stage.
There's only going to be one winner here, and that's probably going to be the U.S. or China. And right now we're winning by a lot.
The transformative technology driving hundreds of billions of dollars of investment into data centers, while economic strain like higher interest rates and new tariffs have forced companies to rethink how and where they build their technology. Despite manufacturers focusing on developing cheaper materials and domestic supply chains, it's all sparking concerns over a potential AI bubble, as companies like the ones showcased here race to establish dominance. Maura Barrett, Scripps News Group, Las Vegas.
Thanks for spending part of your evening with Today As It Happened. I'm Holly Furfer. Have an excellent Monday night.